Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about these CFP superlatives. Gave out the offensive MVP, obviously Will Howard, the defensive MVP, obviously Jack Sawyer, and you move forward to the All-CFP team. I wanted to give out my All-CFP team as I see it. Wanted to give a little bit of love to some different teams out there, but it's going to be a lot of Ohio State. Let's just be totally honest. Those were the guys that really took over this tournament in a lot of ways, and we'll start with the offensive side of the ball, and you'll find that's where Ohio State did a lot of their work. But let's go ahead and jump into this thing. Will Howard's the quarterback. I don't think it needs to be questioned too much. The INT against Texas was the rough moment, and that was just about it for this guy. He totally tore people to pieces, made a number of big-time throws throughout this one, especially that last one. There's no doubt about that. The second he released that ball, you felt like Jeremiah Smith was down there somewhere, and he absolutely was. He made the play of the game, but this was the guy that executed an offense that was really, really hard to execute throughout this year, found a way to get it done on the biggest stage, and just continue to make plays, in big-time moments where it really could have fallen apart, where he could have made one mistake and this entire season falls to pieces for Ohio State. He never did. He always made the right play, and although he had those 2 picks throughout this thing, one of them was relatively inconsequential against Tennessee. The other one, Texas took advantage of, but at the end of the day, they win that game. They keep moving forward, and Will Howard was a huge reason for that. Was remarkable throughout this year, but these last 4 games was downright special. The running backs are just the Ohio State running backs, frankly. Now, I could have put Kaytron Allen in here, and I really thought about putting Kaytron Allen or Nick Singleton in here, but couldn't make up my mind on who I wanted to put in, so I just threw in the Ohio State duo. I think these guys were downright incredible. TreVeyon Henderson, as far as I'm concerned, maybe made the most impactful play of the CFP when you talk about that run that or that catch, that he had against Texas right before halftime. If he doesn't make that play, you're looking at an end of the game scenario where Texas has a 4th down. They kick a field goal to go up 17-14, and then Ohio State's down 3 points with about 2 minutes left in that game. That play totally changed what Ohio State was capable of in that game and really this entire year, and it was made by another guy that found his way back to this team for that national title. Remarkable moment for him, and very well could be the play of the year. Obviously, maybe not the moment and the energy that a lot of the other ones had, but obviously was a play that had a huge impact on what they did. And then Quinshon Judkins was the mean runner throughout this thing. He was absolutely incredible, got a huge amount of big-time catches, big-time runs, and was a mean lead blocker just for fun as well. He was a guy that really kind of set the edge for this Ohio State team. Now, there were plenty of guys that did that, but especially on the offensive side of the ball, the way this guy plays the game gave this team a little bit of that edge that they very much needed. He likes to bark at guys pretty good, and he was going to do it throughout that game last night and really throughout this tournament, but he was downright incredible. Last night might have been his best performance of the CFP, and the other 3 were downright incredible as well. For the wide receivers, we just got the guys from the national title, really. Jeremiah Smith, there's no doubt about that. He was the best wide receiver throughout this thing. Would have been the offensive MVP if the guy throwing the ball wasn't so incredible as well. But he got hit a little bit in that Texas game, obviously. They did a really good job of slowing him down. But the reality is everyone that tried to just play him man up did not do very well. He's an absolute force of nature. He's the best player in the country as far as I'm concerned going into 2025, and he very much showed that throughout this thing. Jaden Greathouse was downright incredible in the last 2 games for Notre Dame. He was a guy that really gave Notre Dame a shot last night. If he doesn't make a couple of those plays, this one wraps up pretty quickly. Ohio State wins probably 34-10, and you look forward into what Notre Dame's going to do going forward and if this thing's going to totally implode. But Jaden Greathouse made a couple of big-time plays, was remarkable really throughout this tournament, but especially in that Penn State and Ohio State game, made a number of plays that gave Notre Dame a shot in both those games. Emeka Egbuka, with how good Jeremiah Smith was, a little bit overshadowed this guy, but he was downright special. He was an absolute freak throughout this thing, made big play after big play, especially in that Texas game when they very much needed him. He made a number of plays. Definitely a huge big-time player, and whoever gets him in the draft is getting a very polished, very good receiver, kind of like a Jackson Smith and Jigba type, who I absolutely love and who's becoming an NFL star before our eyes. The tight end is Tyler Warren. Tight ends didn't necessarily have the dominating CFP that I'm sure they would have loved, but Tyler Warren had by far the best performance of a tight end when he played Boise State back in the quarterfinals. He was downright incredible in that game, and he was really incredible throughout this thing. Made a number of big-time blocks in the run game, obviously made a number of catches, and he was the guy that he was really throughout the year. A dominating force that was impossible to stop for a lot of these teams. And then the Ohio State offensive line did just such a good job throughout this thing. They had 5 different starting groups throughout the year. They had 27 different groups overall throughout the year, and they found a way to win the CFP. They were just remarkable throughout the CFP. Had a little bit of trouble with Tennessee and Texas early on with those defensive lines, but overall did plenty in the run game and especially in the pass pro. Did a great job, and obviously this offense took full advantage of that. Moving forward to the interior defensive line, I think you have to start with Ty Hamilton. Was absolutely incredible through this one, dominated pretty much every single offensive line that he faced on the interior. And then Vernon Broughton was a guy that didn't necessarily pop up too much on the stat sheet, but you rewatch those Texas games. This guy was a force. He was an absolute problem for every single offensive lineman that he faced, and he was a huge reason that Texas defense even was able to hold up against Ohio State, because you don't stop that run game, it's very obvious. You don't stop that Ohio State offense, but Vernon Broughton in that front did a great job, and he was just an absolute force all year. Finished it off really, really strong in the CFP. The edge rushing is just the duo that Ohio State has. This is a group, a duo of really, really special guys. JTT went 2 sacks, 1.5 sacks, and a sack last night. He was downright special. Jack Sawyer maybe made the play of the CFP and made a number of other ones. Was remarkable throughout this thing, and this duo of guys has been together for the last 4 years. They've had the biggest moments in the sport the last 4 games, and it's been incredible to watch this duo go at it the last couple of years, and it was a great ending. There's no doubt about that. They dominated that game last night and obviously finished off being national champions. The linebacking group is really fun. Jack Kaiser did an incredible job throughout this tournament. He was a guy that was a downright game changer throughout this thing. Flew around the field, almost had the huge INT against Penn State that might have put that thing away, but really led that front seven in a lot of ways. Made a number of plays in that Georgia game and really made a number of plays last night. A lot of this stuff was kind of out of his hands in some respects and out of a lot of people's hands on that Notre Dame defense, but overall, this guy was a huge leader for this team and did an incredible job throughout this year, was an absolute force throughout the last 4 games. And then Cody Simon, he was the defensive MVP for 2 of these games for Ohio State. He was downright incredible throughout this thing. Frankly, he could have won defensive MVP if Jack Sawyer didn't make that massive play against Texas, but his draft stock has to have climbed incredible amounts throughout these last 4 games. He's a downright leader of this group, and I think he's a guy that's going to get a ton of love at the Combine. Incredible athlete, and one of those guys that you need an interior, you need a middle linebacker. He can be that guy for about 10 years for you if you need. The cornerbacks are an interesting group because these 2 guys really struggled last night, if I'm being totally honest, or struggled at different moments. Didn't overall struggle, but Christian Gray, he had the big-time play made on him. Jeremiah Smith took advantage of him that one time on that big-time moment, but the reality is this guy was incredible throughout this thing. He made the play that ultimately sent Notre Dame to the national title with the pick against Drew Aller. He made a number of huge plays throughout this tournament, did an incredible job, really since Benjamin Morrison went down, has been an incredible player, but really throughout these last 4 games has played some great football. That last one's going to sting. There's no doubt about that. But he's made play after play throughout this thing and been one of the best defensive players in this tournament. No doubt about that. Jordan Hancock has been incredible. He was a force throughout the CFP. He had a big-time play made on him last night in Jaden Greathouse 30-yard touchdown. But at the end of the day, he rolled down in coverage so well. He played the run incredibly well, like you see in that picture. And he made a number of plays for this team in a year where all of the other guys were taking all the attention. The guy that was kind of overshadowed, and Jordan Hancock really stole the show in the end of the year. And then Jahdae Barron, this is the leader of this Texas defense all year, and he backed it up in the CFP. Was a huge reason that Jeremiah Smith was slowed down. Obviously, plenty of guys helped out with that, but he was obviously a huge piece of that, and really throughout the 3 games was just impossible to pass to. Really, if you were passing to his side of the field, you were not going to enjoy the result, regardless of if you were Clemson, if you were Arizona State, or if you were Ohio State. You were going to struggle throwing to his side of the field. He did an incredible job throughout those 3 games, and he leaves Texas as one of those guys that wears the number 7, and that's a very special number around that DB group. And then the safeties was about as easy as you could possibly make it. Xavier Watts and Caleb Downs, the 2 best safeties in the country, were the 2 best safeties in the CFP, and Xavier Watts, first of all, just an absolute beast. An INT versus Indiana was all over the place in the other games, especially that Georgia game was just flying around the field, and he made play after play. He was one of the elite back-end players that Notre Dame fans will remember for a very long time. He was a very special player for this program, and it finished off really strong. Although he didn't necessarily get the ultimate goal that he wanted, man, did he play some great football down the stretch and put his team in a great position to possibly win that national title. And then Caleb Downs. What more can you say about this guy? He absolutely flies around the field at a degree that I really have never seen, if I'm being totally honest. The speed that he comes down from in the safety position, and then the way that he makes a tackle, the way that he breaks down and definitely makes pretty much every tackle right in front of him. He was the best player in the country on defense throughout, he is the best player in the country on defense going into 2025 as far as I'm concerned, and he was incredible throughout this tournament. But this group was almost impossible to put together. I'll be totally honest with you. You look around the CFP and you had Dennis Sutton do incredible things for Penn State. You had Texas have a number of big-time plays from Matthew Golden and Gunnar Helm throughout that thing. You obviously had Notre Dame make a number of big-time plays in the running game, and Riley Leonard made a number of plays. But at the end of the day, that offense was going to be a lot of Ohio State. That defense was going to be a lot of Ohio State with a little bit of Texas and Notre Dame sprinkled in there. But a remarkable group from this CFP, and I have to imagine next year is going to be just as good, and really overall, the next couple of years are going to be this good because this is a special group of guys, but there's some special group of guys coming through all these teams. So it's going to be awesome to see this thing develop and see which other guys can stamp their name into history next time this year, but going to be incredible to watch this unravel over the next couple of years. But let's take our last break here, and when we come back, we'll do a little bit of a top 10 Tuesday, do my final rankings for the 2024-25 season. A little bit tough to put together. I have one team in there that might be a little bit surprising, but overall I pretty much like my list, and we'll do it right after this, so stick with us.